Welcome to the UShadow Student Pre-Departure session, hosted by the Topple Career Center. This presentation will cover everything you need to know to have a successful UShadow experience. Here are some of the main points we are going to cover. First, I'm going to talk about expectations the Topple Career Center and University of Miami have for you as part of the UShadow program. Next, I'll go over the process of how you'll make initial contact with your host. Then we will discuss some best strategies for coordinating a time to meet your host. Finally, I will go over how to best prepare for the shadowing experience. As I mentioned, there are several expectations the Topple Career Center and University of Miami have for all students in the UShadow program. First of all, we expect you to commit to meeting your host, which is one of the statements you will agree to in your completed application. This means that you will meet with your host for a single day of shadowing anytime between now and the last day of class for the current semester we are in. Also, you will meet with your host during their typical business hours unless another time is requested by them, as your experience will be most effective if you are with your host during their typical workday. Our next expectation is that you maintain professionalism before, during, and after the UShadow experience. This includes all email, phone, and in-person communication you have with your host. We also expect you meet your host with an open mind. We try our best to match all students to their top preferences. However, we ask you to be open-minded if the Topple Career Center matches you to a host we believe would be a better fit for you. Finally, we ask you to end your UShadow experience by completing a UShadow reflection assignment to showcase what you have learned from your experience. Now that I have covered our expectations for successfully completing the UShadow program, I would like to review with you our non-completion policy, which was put into place to ensure you, our host, and the Topple Career Center maintain optimal working relations throughout the UShadow program. This policy applies when a student does not do the following: connect to their host within a week of being matched, schedule a UShadow meeting with their host in a timely manner, and lastly, appear for a scheduled UShadow meeting and/or reschedule their meeting with at least 48 hours of advance notice. If a student is to not complete one of these tasks, the student will lose complete access to Handshake until they attend a meeting with the UShadow coordinator to discuss what happened and provide a typed letter of apology addressed "Dear UShadow Host" that can be sent to the host. Please send any questions regarding this policy to the UShadow coordinator. To showcase the non-completion policy in action, here is a sample communication from a past UShadow cycle in which a student did not follow one of the guidelines, rescheduling a meeting within 24 hours. As you can see from this email message from a student to a host, a student missed a meeting with their host and sent this after the host reached out to find out where the student was. There are two major items that are problematic with this email that we would like to discuss. First, its timeliness. If there are any emergencies that require you to reschedule your meeting, we please ask you do so with 48 hours of notice. Next, the message is too informal. Keep in mind that you are meeting with a professional, and therefore professional written and oral communication is expected. In this scenario, the host ultimately decided not to reschedule their meeting with the student for these two reasons. Thus, we recommend you communicate any potential issues with the UShadow coordinator and your host as soon as possible to ensure you have a successful experience. After being accepted into the UShadow program, you will have the opportunity to review potential hosts on the Cane to Cane website and favorite any that you would like to be paired with. Don't worry if you do not find a good UShadow match for your preferences early on. The UShadow coordinators work hard to find additional hosts to join the program after students have applied. After the favoriting period ends, the Topple Career Center will connect you to your host via a message on Cane to Cane that looks very similar to the one you see here. This message serves as an introduction between you and your host, and once it has been sent, you can feel free to start coordinating a time to meet your host for a single day of shadowing. So what should you say in your initial email communication to your host? Here are a few items you may want to include. As a reminder, remember that you must respond to your host within 1 week of being connected. Remember to address your host using the correct salutation, such as Mr., Ms., or Doctor. Next, introduce yourself. You can include your year in school, your majors and minors, an overview of your career goals, and why you applied for the UShadow program. Of course, show gratitude and say thank you. Remember, these hosts are volunteers and they are taking time out of their busy work schedules to help you with your career journey. Provide telephone contact information if it would be easier for you both to coordinate your meeting over phone. Lastly, feel free to attach a resume so that your host can see some of your past and current experiences. Here you can see a sample message that you are free to customize for your initial communication to your host. The first paragraph goes into detail about the student's interests and career goals, as well as some of their related prior experiences. The second paragraph discusses finding a time to meet. Pay attention to the third sentence of paragraph 2. I should note that I take many of my classes on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so a Tuesday, Thursday might work better on my end. We know that you are all very busy with classes, and so to make scheduling easier, it can be helpful to let your host know from the beginning if there are any particular days that would be problematic for you because of your classes. Keep in mind you may also shadow during school breaks when classes are not in session to provide you with greater flexibility. Finally, paragraph 3 showcases the gratitude the student has towards the host for taking time to meet with them. Once your initial communication is sent, it is time to schedule a meeting with your host. We ask that students and hosts schedule this meeting directly to provide you both with more flexibility. Here are a few reminders about scheduling your meeting. UShadow is a one-day shadowing experience, thus you and your host will be choosing one day during the program in which you will meet. Again, this can happen any time before the end of the current semester. We do not want UShadow to interfere with any academics. Thus, if you choose to meet your UShadow host during a time you regularly have class, you must get approval from your faculty member in advance. Finally, we ask you to be flexible with your host when scheduling a meeting. Offer as many time and date possibilities as possible. Here are some other questions you'll want to ask regarding your meeting. Not only will you want to confirm with them the specific hours you will be with your host on the day of shadowing, you'll also want to confirm the meeting location. Most students shadow their host at the host organization. However, there are times when the host and student decide to meet at another nearby location like a restaurant or on campus. If you must travel, consider asking where the best places to park are. Remember, you agreed to provide your own transportation for this meeting. Once this date is scheduled, please let the UShadow coordinator know when, the date, and where the location of your shadowing will take place so that we can add it to our records. Feel free to check in a day or two before meeting your host to confirm the time and location have not been changed. So now the UShadow meeting is scheduled and you may be thinking about how to dress. Depending on the industry you are shadowing, it may determine if you decide to wear business professional or business casual. The image you see here showcases business professional attire, which would require items such as suits, ties, jackets, and closed-toed shoes. If you are unsure of what attire to wear to meet your host, please ask. However, we require you wear a minimum of business casual attire unless your host tells you otherwise. Feel free to rent any professional clothing item you may be lacking at Sebastian's Closet, located at the Topple Career Center. This slide details what could happen on your day of shadowing. Of course, no two shadowing days are alike for any student because of the wide range of industries and occupations involved. However, here are some typical activities you might expect. Depending on timing, you may join your host for lunch or coffee. If shadowing at their organization, you may get a tour of the facility. You may get to attend and observe internal staff meetings or external client meetings. You may get to have formal scheduled chats with others in the organization as well as informal conversations with people who you meet. You will get to explore possible career paths within the organization and profession and discuss trends through these many conversations. However, the options are really endless. Let the UShadow host guide your activities and maintain an open mind. However, hosts love to hear from students about particular items they would like to learn and see, so feel free to share this with your host so that they can plan these into your meetings. Before you meet your host, you'll also want to do your research. Here are some topics you should research before meeting with your host. Research as much as you can about their organization. This can include their mission statement, their culture and values, their major services or products, and their competitors. You can also do some research on the industry if this is your first time getting an inside look. You can also research your host and their professional background utilizing Cane-to-Cane, LinkedIn, or the organization's website. All of this research will help you in asking more thought-out questions. And for the day of, remember to organize your materials. You may want a notepad and pen so that you can take notes, a resume which perhaps your host could critique for you, and of course money just in case. Remember to leave 15 minutes earlier than you plan on leaving and arrive on time. One activity that we highly recommend you complete during your meeting with your host is conducting an informational interview. An informational interview's purpose is to obtain information from the person you are interviewing. In career exploration, it is a highly effective strategy for learning knowledge and advice from working professionals. To get started with an informational interview, develop a list of questions that you want to get answered during your shadow day. This slide contains just a few sample questions you may want to ask, such as, what does a day in the life of this job look like? Or, why did you select this type of work? A quick internet search of informational interview questions will reveal hundreds of other possibilities to ask as well. Think about what you would want to know about the person you are shadowing, their position, their organization, and their industry. Remember to write these questions down, as it may be difficult to remember what you wanted to ask on the spot. Going prepared with questions will help convey your genuine interest in this opportunity and create a better experience for you and your host. It is now after your UShadow meeting. What do you do next? The most important step for you to take is to show your gratitude to your host by writing them a thank you note. We ask that you send these within 48 hours of meeting with your host. Thank the host for taking time out of their day to meet with you, and highlight something interesting or important that you learned or appreciated from the day. Remember to forward a copy of this message to the UShadow coordinator so that we know you have completed your meeting. Sending a thank you note to your host will leave them with a good impression in case you ever need their assistance again in the future. Also, this simple task truly showcases your appreciation. Now I'm going to talk a little about the Topple Career Center's expectations when it comes to emergencies. An emergency, as it relates to UShadow, is an unexpected event that would prevent you from being able to complete your UShadow responsibilities. The key word here is unexpected. Thus, tests and projects and similar items are not emergencies as they are scheduled in advance. If an emergency unfortunately does occur, we ask that you handle the situation as professionally as possible and make sure to communicate with the UShadow coordinator and your host as early as you are able. For example, if you must reschedule your meeting, please do it with as advanced notice as possible. Please remember to let the host know of the change of plan so that they are not expecting you. Sometimes an emergency may occur on the host end as well, and in those situations, we ask you to offer your patience and flexibility as well. Our last expectation for you in completing UShadow is to complete a reflection assignment that showcases what you have learned from participating in the program. This reflection is due within 2 weeks after your shadow meeting. For your reflection assignment, we want you to be creative and personal. Reflections are accepted in a variety of unique forms such as journal entries, videos, and PowerPoints. We can also feature you in our weekly Topple Insider newsletter. If you need assistance in choosing the medium for your reflection assignment, please let us know and we are happy to assist. The reflection must address 3 points. What? Report the facts and events of the experience objectively. So what? Analyze the experience. And now what? Consider the future impact of the experience on you and your career goals. Once your UShadow experience has ended, there are many ways to maximize the new knowledge and connections you have gained. We recommend connecting with your host and others you have interacted with on LinkedIn so they can become a part of your network. We also recommend you maintain contact with your host 1 to 2 times per year for continued guidance. Finally, please share your meetings with our awesome host on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by using the UShadow hashtag and tagging the Topple Career Center. We are now at the end of the pre-departure session. The Topple Career Center hopes that you have a great shadowing experience. Please feel free to contact us anytime with questions during the program at ushadow@miami.edu.